Hey friends, Alvin here. For the next few moments, we're going to have a conversation with Matt Wilkinson, who is not only the director of Next Generation Ministries with CBOQ, but also during the Canadian Baptist National Youth Leaders Forum that we had back in October 2022, he was chair of that forum. And so, Matt, over these next few moments, we're going to talk about this whole new thing called Create and Cultivate. Welcome.
Hey, good to be here and love chatting about this.
So way back in October 2022, we first looked at this whole idea of a forum. Can you tell us just a little bit more about what was the purpose of that forum in the first place?
Yeah, well, the context of the forum is really built around the idea that it's not a conference, it's not a training ground. It's actually a space where you invite specialists in to really be the voice of shaping something that entering into the forum, you're not sure of the outcome, but it's the collective voice that emerges to see what do we need to do in light of this gathering and what has been discussed. And so it took about a year in the works, but it was launched and gathered in October of 2022 with the idea of bringing together 50 influential youth ministry leaders, Canadian Baptist leaders focused on youth ministry from across our country. And that was everything was focusing in on to the small church, medium-sized, large church, a variety of ethnic backgrounds, the idea that it was going to be those that are based in the city, those that are rural, urban, suburban context, male and female leadership. We want to get a wide range of individuals to be able to represent our Canadian Baptist family on the focus, those that are doing frontline ministry work to youth, to gather them together with that idea of where are we at now? We've come out of through COVID, a world-shaping experience. Where are students at? Where's our culture at? Where's our context at? And what does it look like to effectively minister to the next generation in light of where we find ourselves right now?
And so, if I remember correctly, one of the things that happened was we grouped all these different forum delegates into really different groups to kind of talk through some of these different areas that were presented to them. And as I remember these findings, then the conversations, the discussions, where all those different notes were collated into the kind of like this really big pot of data. And so, yourself and some others, some of our other Canadian Baptist youth leaders were the ones who had a chance to delve through that. Just curious, like as you were looking at that, what was something that really jumped out at you when you were kind of sifting through all those different conversations that were recorded?
Yeah, I mean, as we gathered in that room and just had sheets of foolscap, all these notes from the collective voices from each of these different affinity small groups gathered, and looking through that and just seeing what were the key kind of themes that bubbled up. What were the consistencies across the different groups? Well, they were not talking with each other, yet there was consistencies that were rising up. And that's what we really steered into. We know that there's all uniquenesses, there's all unique areas that we all can dive into. But we really wanted to focus in on what were those connecting points? What was the same kind of themes that continue to emerge across the variety of these groups? So it was a great room to be in. It was a lot of information, a lot of insights, a lot of passion and heart that was shown. But as when I looked at that, one of some of the things that really bubbled up is really the word authenticity. Across the board was what was it as youth workers, as a church, to be authentic in our love, in our personal lives, in the way that we lead, and how we build faith community. The idea of authenticity needed to permeate everything and all of who we were, if we're going to be able to reach and engage this next generation. Imagine that another area that really bubbled up was the idea of the work of the Holy Spirit. How are we making space for the Holy Spirit to move, to challenge us, to correct us, to bring meaningful spiritual life change in the space of young people, transformative experiences, and that idea of being able to join with the Holy Spirit, to be led by the Holy Spirit in what we were doing. So those are a couple of the overarching, really big things that obviously worked itself in and through the 4 areas that are described in the Create and Cultivate resource. But looking at that, this was also a place where it was clear that the Canadian Baptist team and the family, all those that were sharing there, they wanted to declare that they loved the bride of Christ. This isn't a rejection of the church that was gathering of why we need to see changes, but it said, hey, we've got faults, we've got shortcomings, we've got disappointments, but it's out of this love that they were like, we want to see the church, not just the institution, but the body of believers be able to be more effective of leading change, of responding to where students are at today, how to minister and partner with the family, and really help young people. We've got 8.2 million young people across Canada that are not walking with Jesus. And the collective there is, we've got to do something different. We're just not hitting it all. And if we don't respond to this, we're going to continue the same trajectory. So let's stare into this and let's take serious the response to be able to do whatever it takes to reach and engage this next generation.
Yeah, there's definitely, without necessarily going through the entire report, because I think the resource itself is something that many of our friends can look at both on our website as well as at createandcultivate.ca, because there's going to be other things that will be added to that in the coming days and coming weeks. But Matt, as we, because I know that for you and especially for Dan Pike, who's the director of Youth and Family Ministries with the Canadian Baptist of Atlantic Canada, I know you both stayed up pretty much all night the night before at the end to write together at least an initial report. And when you presented it, it was interesting to hear some of the feedback. I think of when Dr. Anna Robbins, who's president of Acadia Divinity College, using the words like manifesto, like, so when you look at this resource now, how do you see it impacting the Canadian Baptist Church?
It is. It was a night. And Dan Pike is an amazing wordsmith, almost poet. And as we crafted this together, and as he took the lead to speak into shaping this, and that's really where it started to bubble out. This idea of create and cultivate came through. Two things that we needed to do to create that which is not yet existing and develop, and to cultivate the areas that are needing care. And when we steered into that and saw that emerge, and when the report we shared with those constituents that were invited and gathered there, you're right, Dr. Hannah Robbins did share, said, this is really more than just a report. What has just been shared here is that the likes of a manifesto. This is a calling to the church. This is a declaration that there is a move that we can make. There is areas to be addressed. There is opportunities to take advantage of and to lean into. That this is one that says there is more than just hope. There is action that we can move on that will take young people, empower young people, allow their voice to be heard, and the church as a body of believers to be able to continue to see what's the depth of spiritual health in our leaders, in our communities, in our young people. When we realize that there is spaces that we can create and cultivate that will move us forward. When we get frustrated, when we feel disappointed, when we feel what more is there to do, when we gathered in that room, when we heard this report, when we looked at what it was and what we could be, it was energizing. It was something that came alive. It was something, though, that was also compelling. And I would say also the same, like, really challenging. I mean, the whole idea that we, in a manifesto there to say, like, we have to look at what it is to build unity amidst our diversity, to challenge ourselves in that space, to rise up anointed leaders, to really trust entrepreneurial leadership, to really run forward, allow people to lead into their giftings, recognizing that our polity and our structures, that those need to shift and change if we're actually going to reach an emerging generation. These are big buckets that challenge us. It's not always easy to hear. There's a lot of opportunity. But when you hear those kind of things, but to go, hey, we can turn away from it. We can say, let's not worry about it. We don't need to go there, or to go, you know what? This is our manifesto. We are making a declaration for the church that will really want to see the next generation move closer to Jesus.
Yeah, and I think that energy was felt by a lot of the people who were in that room. And I know for some of our churches, as they've been starting to look at this resource now and seeing, they become inspired and encouraged. But I can also see how some other churches who might look at this and they're not even sure, what to do with it now. They're not sure what steps to take. Maybe they're thinking, we don't even know how we could use this. What would you say to them?
I'd say it starts with one. What I mean by this is we want to seek to be one church, one God, continually moving everyone one step closer to Jesus, both those inside the church, outside the church. Let us make a 1-degree shift. You see, so often we try to look at how do we do a 180 when we receive resources, insight, and inspiration like this. And so often it feels overwhelming, unattainable. And the result is that we do nothing. A 1-degree shift is just a slight difference, a slight focus, a slight emphasis, a slight change. But if you follow that trajectory, in the long run, you can be in a significantly different place. When someone was to read through this area, this document, to go, what's that 1-degree shift that our church can make right now that can have us in a totally different place in the next 5 to 10 years in the way that we reach and disciple the next generation? What is it to be able to see each and every person in the church mentor just one person of the younger generation that can result in transformative discipleship? What is it maybe to have one young person on your board, one young person being able to teach? What is it to have one young person in the community? What is it to reach one young person to connect them into a faith community? You see, it starts with one. What is it to tackle just one of these areas, of the 4 areas? What's one area that you can gather people in your church around? Your parents, senior pastor, youth worker, church members, students, kids, small group to go, hey, we want to stare into this area of one of the 4 areas and say, hey, we're going to start here. So you don't try to tackle and create and cultivate in all 4 areas maybe right away. Some of you may have a capacity to do that. Amazing. Realistically, avoid doing nothing by making sure you start with one thing. Start with one and see where the Lord takes it.
No, I think that that's a very, it's a reminder of that you're right. We don't have to try to do everything all at once. Sometimes it can feel overwhelming that we have to somehow tackle everything all at one time. I think you're right. Picking that one area that the Holy Spirit leads us towards, and to be able to focus on that one for this period of time, and then we'll see what the next step is after that. And so Matt, I mean, for our CBOQ churches right now, what are ways that they could reach out to our staff, and what ways could we be a help to them?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think in each of these areas, we're going to continue to foster resources, each of these. And so making sure that they're connecting in to what we continue to roll out and release online as resources to point them. Connecting in with yourself. Those are focusing also on kids, reaching in to Tanya, myself, of going, hey, one of these 4 areas is really interested that they want to dive into. What are the questions we need to ask? They can also reach out to us to find actually there's way more behind each of these 4 areas that we actually have findings on, insights on, resources from the collective gathering. We obviously could not input everything that we gathered in those 3 days together into this document to help out. So I think phoning in, emailing, checking in with one of ourselves here from the CBOQ offices and go, hey, we want to dive more into this. What should we be looking at? What should we be thinking? So just ask the question, start the conversation. Is always more helpful to do. Rather than you've got to go at it alone, is what's that one piece of the conversation that we can be entered into to support you, to know that you guys are wanting to dive into this and resource it. We're also looking at developing our own resources along to support this in our churches. I think of stuff around young leadership that's going to be coming out shortly about how we want to support our churches on really about developing anointed leaders, young leader development in what we do. You know, when we think about intergenerational unity, a cultural unity, amidst how do we build unity amidst diversity? Lean into it. So what does that look like for young person to see this and for a church to be that way? Alvin, you and Tanya have done so much work on the idea of intergenerational engagement and building trust and community in that area. So there's those specs. There's so many more resources. I said, when we talk about holistically investing into our youth, and we know the challenging world that they find themselves in, we've got access to experts that actually study in the area of mental health, the loneliness, depression, the hurts, the pain, and how do you actually help youth navigate through trauma or challenges or hurts or pains, and how do you do it in a godly way that's helping them move closer to Jesus? These are the kind of resources that we've got available. Many people don't realize how much we've got available to them. And so what I would say the biggest thing to do is to ask. That ask, if you don't ask, you've already said no. You never pursued that opportunity. And so to reach out to any one of us here on the CBOQ Youth Family Next Gen team, that we're here to serve our churches as they invest into the lives of those young people in their church and in their community.
No, I think you're that's a great reminder for many people who, at times are maybe well connected with us, maybe other times aren't have not connected for a while, and so I think you're right. Just being able to reach out and ask, and we're always willing to try to help that way. Matt, thanks for your time. Thanks for unpacking this resource, not just for people to read the resource itself, but to even understand a little bit more about what was the impetus behind it, what's been driving it, and to give a fuller picture of some of the different ways that they could be using this well. So appreciate your time.
My pleasure.